Good evening, everyone. Boa tarde, and welcome to Casa Carlucci. We are so excited to have you with us today. And of course, this is a very important time to be having this conversation, as this month marked a pivotal series of actions on global artificial intelligence, AI governance, and regulation. Special thanks to our amazing panelists, some of whom came just for this event, so we are so grateful, and we could not have predicted a more important time to have this conversation with such an amazing group. So thank you so much for being with us. For all of you who are interested in their bios, you can see them on the QR code on the back of the chairs in front of you. Special thanks also to the U.S. Department of Commerce for sponsoring this event. We know that this is an exciting and relatively new topic, and we hope to make tonight's conversation accessible and informative regardless of your level of expertise, and that will be my job this evening. So, quickly, a special thanks to the embassy staff, Nick Parikh from our economic team, Sonia Ramesh, Michael Holmes, Luis Farias, Yoching Ma, and Pedro Ferreira from the FCS team. This team is amazing. I think about 10 days ago, you could find us all in Washington, D.C., leading a bilateral trade delegation about renewable energy and critical minerals, and we came back and did a quick turnaround to support this. So I thank you to my team. We cannot do anything without them and all their hard work. So the United States and the European Union share the same fundamental goal in governing AI, to leverage its opportunities while mitigating the risks. So what are the opportunities? The available evidence suggests that foundation models, ChatGPT is probably the best known, are likely to significantly increase productivity. McKinsey estimates that these foundation models have the potential to generate approximately $3.5 trillion in value, increasing some sectors' labor productivity by as much as 3% a year. Goldman Sachs found that AI could eventually increase annual global GDP by 7%. Here in Portugal, for example, Microsoft is partnering with Hospital de Cascais to transform the healthcare sector by modernizing clinical history, data collection processes, and medical information by applying generative AI and machine learning to enhance user experience and improve the quality of care provided. But what about the risks? Irresponsible use of AI could exacerbate social harms like fraud, discrimination, bias, disinformation, compromised privacy, trade secrets and safety. It could undermine human rights and democratic institutions, displace and disempower workers, stifle competition and innovation, and pose risks to our national security. So before we dive into the conversation with our amazing panelists, I just want to briefly summarize the US and European approaches to regulation and then turn to our experts to better understand how we can all benefit from the power of AI by navigating the risks. In 2021, the European Commission proposed the first EU regulatory framework for AI, known as the EU AI Act. That act focuses on categorizing risks posed by different AI applications and then increasing or decreasing the regulations based on an applicant's perceived risks. Separately, the European Parliament's version of the draft EU AI Act, adopted in June of 2023, diverges from the Commission's risk-based approach by including across-the-board obligations for providers of all foundation and generative AI models. In our view, applying regulation to all foundation models may hinder innovation in Europe, dampening the expected boost to productivity and potentially leading to a migration of jobs and investment to other markets. We're also concerned about the Parliament's proposal to classify AI systems intended for use by very large online platforms as automatically or inherently high risk. Finally, several of the obligations for providers rely on terms, characteristics, and implementation requirements that remain vague or undefined. We seek to clarify and perhaps develop a common set of terms and definitions between our standards bodies. And on the other side of the pond, quite conveniently, President Biden announced on October 30th, just in time for this conversation, an executive order on AI, which seeks to promote the safe, secure, and trustworthy development, deployment, and use of AI. The executive order requires businesses developing next-generational AI models posing serious risks to national security, economic security, or public health to notify the government when training these systems and to share their safety test results. The U.S. approach to AI is anchored in a belief that AI will impact almost all facets of life around the world, and that a multi-stakeholder and international approach is necessary to mitigate potential risks. We have a shared interest in navigating the opportunities and the risks together. Practically, this means we must develop and harmonize AI standards. The administration will coordinate with international partners and standards development organizations to advance responsible global standards. This will include, for example, building societal resilience against the risks posed by deepfakes by coordinating standards for identifying synthetic digital content and labeling authentic government-produced digital content. So I hope that that was a brief but succinct and robust at the same time introduction. And now let me turn to the experts that we have today, our panelists. There's lots of information to learn from you. We also have audience questions, and we'd love to have some dialogue. So we're going to try to keep responses to about 5 minutes, and then take some audience questions. So Elham, I'll start with you. The White House executive order on artificial intelligence issued on October 30th, among many other things, directs your agency, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST, to set standards and use AI to help find and fix vulnerabilities in critical software. So, as NIST goes about setting standards in the AI context, can this effort be coordinated with like-minded countries and blocs? For example, with the European Union Standard Organization, CENELEC, so that we all have a common set of definitions, or are the approaches already too divergent?
Thank you so very much for the question. Thank you so very much for the invitations, including me in this wonderful, wonderful event and this wonderful city. It's my first time in Lisbon. Going back and talking about the standards, first I have to say that I'm doing standards since 2006, and it really warms my heart that standards now is a very fashionable topic and everybody's talking about that. Everybody used to roll their eyes on standards. But answering your question is we ought to. We ought to find a way to work globally because, as you said, we all share the same vision of safe, trustworthy, responsible AI that works for the humanity and serves humanity. We want to get the innovations of the AI to improve our lives. And we have already done some of the work towards that. If that's okay, I'll go back and say a few things about the agency that I'm from. National Institute of Standards and Technology. It's a federal agency under Department of Commerce with a mission to support U.S. industrial competitiveness and promoting economic security. We have a very broad portfolio of research from building the most accurate atomic clock to modeling the behavior of wildfires to working in cybersecurity and artificial intelligence. And we have a long-standing tradition of cultivating trust in technology. We do that by promoting and participating in development of the technically sound, scientifically valid standards, advancing measurement science, standards and measurement science that makes technology more robust, more reliable, more private, more secure, in other words, more trustworthy. And that's exactly what we are doing in the space of AI, because as you mentioned very rightly so, AI has enormous potential, but can also exacerbate has negative consequences that can exacerbate the inequalities in the society. In January 2023, directed by a congressional mandate, we released the AI Risk Management Framework. It's a voluntary framework for managing the risk of AI systems in a flexible, structured, measurable way. Measurable because if you cannot measure it, you cannot improve it. So if you really want to improve the trustworthiness, we have to be able to understand what we mean by trustworthiness, what constitutes trust, and be able to measure that. So the AI-RMF, the first part of the AI-RMF basically does that, sets the foundation and an interoperable lexicon to talk about risk management, and trustworthiness, going back to important topic of having a set of common definitions, establishing socio-technical characteristics for AI systems. This paves the way to be able to measure. So we need to know what to measure to be able to measure them. Since the release of the AI RMF, many of the major companies and industries in US has already adopted and using it, including some other government agencies. And then the release of the executive order October 30th, and what a week it was for AI, the week of October 30th. Monday, executive order came out. Wednesday, at the UK Safety Summit, Vice President and then Secretary Raimondo announced the launch of the US Safety Institute. And then NIST released a Federal Register notice information about establishing a consortium as part of the Safety Institute, all to bring the community together and lead the conversations and efforts in measurement. As President said at the signing of the EO, AI must be governed. We all agree that we need methods and methodologies for evaluation of AI systems. And at the same time, the whole community agrees that we don't quite know how to evaluate AI systems. So through the tasks and mandates of the EO, we will develop guidelines and guidance for evaluations of AI systems, including red teaming, guidance for content authentications. We work with other agencies to build test environments to promote evaluations of safety and trust for AI systems. And we are already working globally and internationally to make it a global conversation. It ought to be a global conversation because AI technologies does not know borders.
Thank you very much. Daniela, welcome back.
Thank you. It's a
So
pleasure.
happy to see you. You are familiar with AI governance in both the EU and the United States. The US government assesses that the European Parliament's version of the draft EU Artificial Intelligence Act would likely have negative effects on innovation in the EU and beyond, with knock-on commercial effects for US-based firms, perhaps weakening our collective competitiveness. How do you view the requirements of across-the-board obligations for all providers for foundation models?
Thank you, Ambassador Levine, for this invitation. It's a pleasure to be here again. I would like to start maybe explaining what the AI Act and the executive order, the US executive order, is about, and then get into the foundational models. So I think from the bigger difference is that the EU is going to penalize systems, high-risk systems that don't meet the regulations. And that penalty is heavy. It's anything from 30 million euros to 2 to 6% of the global annual revenue of a company. You can imagine that, obviously in the US, which is a total different approach of incentive to innovation, there's no such thing. The guidance, while the principles are the same, we both in the EU and in the US focus on what do high-risk systems and applications mean, and I'll get to that. What is the transparency and all the part of transparency, and what is and how can we test these systems in sandboxes, which Elham has been putting on her standards all these years, and in the AI one specifically. So obviously the big difference is while there's a huge penalty incentive in Europe, there is not in the US, but because the technology evolves too rapidly, it's almost counterproductive to actually. You can't regulate at the speed that the technology is coming out now, especially in AI. The common ground areas, though, and that is, of course, a problem for European companies, which are already behind in general in development, in resources, in marketplace to explore and deploy technologies. That is already, that puts them in, that is the biggest competitive disadvantage. There's less resources, there's less investment, and on top of it, there's not much incentive to do so because of the penalties that are going to be launched. But the common ground are the definition of high-risk applications. those are the ones who deal with social scoring, that deal with emotion recognition, biometrics, usage of that to manipulate information, to manipulate behaviors. Generative content, which is synthetic, all of it, whether it's text, voice, image, video, music, code. When it's synthetic, both sides of the pond agree that it needs to be watermarked. It needs to be clear to the population that you're interacting with an AI service that is not that's synthetic. And the last common ground is the part of the testing. The creation of environments for test beds, sandboxes to test these applications, especially in areas that touch healthcare, that touch ability to, human resources, ability to get recruited. The executive order actually goes a little bit beyond in equity and fairness and civil rights and approaching a little bit more that inequality and misinformation that the AI systems can have now can provide. Now it's a good timing because there's important elections coming up next year. It is critical to watermark anything that has that can be used with ill intent. When we have UK elections, US elections, and India elections, which are huge population countries coming up. In regards to the foundation models, and I forgot the question, sorry. But I think what I can tell about foundation models, the foundation models are models that really only very heavily invested companies can perform. These are they require lots of amounts of data. Am I in the 5-minute mark? So foundational models require a lot of investment. If anything that we should account for is the users, the number of users of foundational models, rather than their revenue. I think that's one of the questions we were going to discuss. It doesn't matter if the company has revenue, but if the company has a usage base that suddenly hits a million, a billion very rapidly, something needs to be addressed. And it's in the usage, and it's not so much in the revenue of the company.
Thank you. Thank you. Paulo, you are the head of the Center for Responsible AI, which aims to bring together many diverse stakeholders to better govern AI, but also to mitigate the negative impacts. Moving beyond the United States and the EU, I want to talk a bit about how other countries are addressing responsible AI. For example, in China, draft rules unveiled in August would require makers of chatbots to adhere to the country's strict censorship rules and socialist values. Beijing is also taking more control over the ways makers of AI systems use their data. China's control of public discourse is based on a level of government surveillance, censorship, and propaganda that simply is not acceptable in liberal democracies. So how can we bring China and countries like China into the framework on responsible AI?
Yeah, I think that's a great topic for discussion. We know that as we are here today, we have a network, a social network like TikTok, that is currently using algorithms to influence people, by propagating fake content that is backed by China, and this is something that, of course, can't be accepted. And on AI, we cannot commit the same mistakes as we committed on social media, where we acted too late. And so it's very important, I would say, to first start with bridging, and I think that's one of the reasons I'm so excited to be here today, to bridge the worlds of the US and Europe and create a common ground on regulation that really creates a bigger market that prevents this kind of applications from being introduced and from, in a sense, influencing US and European citizens. And I think the road to get there is through regulations to create this big a marketplace that shares this common ground on regulation, and we have this kind of quite different approaches on regulation from the US and from Europe, which is very interesting to observe. And I'm going to go into that afterwards. That I think we need to create these bridges. And this is why these forums are very important, because they join people from the two perspectives. And so we need to build these bridges. And so Europe has followed the track of risk, as Daniela was mentioning. So classifying AI products in terms of the risk, high risk, average risk, and then low risk, where you just need to be transparent about what you are doing, and so on. And then the US has followed a different strategy, focusing more on use cases and computational power to really, address scenarios that are really the dangerous scenarios for humanity, namely regarded with biological weapons. Okay, and I think that. The combination of these two approaches, like finding this common ground between these two approaches, that, for example, in the US, strikes a balance between innovation and regulation that should inspire Europe. As a member of a startup company, we need to strive as an innovative company, and we don't want too much regulation that is going to give competitive advantages to big tech. Okay, it's very, very important to preserve the competitiveness of smaller European companies, and I think we should learn with the US perspective on innovation. I think that Europe is too conservative, is very much into just trying to control a lot of what can be innovated, and by creating this space across the ocean, I think we will get to a much better position and make sure that we will not have AI products that are developed by governments that discriminate, that intentionally want to influence voting. Okay, so I think there was the founder of DeepMind the other day wrote an op-ed on the New York Times saying that we should immediately stop any AI that has to do with democratic processes, because that's really the big danger that we are facing in the short term. And Yuval Harari, the author of *Sapiens*, was saying that we are living in a dangerous moment, because AI can produce intimacy at scale. So we can create these chatbots with which people talk that are really, really persuasive and that can influence the way people vote. And we know there are some companies in the world that help governments to win elections by creating this type of manipulation. And this is urgent to regulate. The influence of AI on democratic processes is urgent to regulate. And I think that so Europe has been working on the EU AI Act for at least 3 years. So we are finally at the stage where we should have it approved. The EU AI Act is not perfect. It has things that need to be improved, but it's a baseline. Okay, and ourselves here at the Center of Responsible AI, so we emitted a position letter on the things we need to be changed on the EU AI Act. But now, in the context of the executive order, that, by the way, is a really clear to understand, well-written piece of, not legislation, because it's not legislation, but it's really an amazing call to action on AI. And it's not only readable, but it really strikes the right balance between innovation and regulation. It addresses the civil rights issues, all the top concerns on responsible AI, about not discriminating when you are applying to get a bank loan, to have a house, or to apply for a job, or all these things I think are really, really well covered. And I think this, in a sense, Europe can teach the UI from an European perspective, but also the UI can teach Europe on this. And I think we are here to find this common ground to move forward.
Fantastic, thank you. Tiago, you represent AI's positive aspects and success stories, namely using AI to improve human health through apps that promote healthy behavior or more accurate disease detection. You recently developed a wonderful project at our favorite, the Champalimaud Foundation, that will improve treatment and surgery for women with breast cancer. How can we advance the responsible use of AI in healthcare and the development of affordable and life-saving drugs?
Well, thank you, Ambassador, for the opportunity to be here and to participate in this event. So AI, as a transformative technology that it is, it offers a lot of possibilities for many sectors, and healthcare is definitely one of them. But it also brings many challenges that need to be addressed. Now, maybe fortunately, healthcare is in a different situation than other sectors because healthcare has historically been an industry that was already very regulated. So there's already regulation in terms of biases that medical devices or treatments, they need to take into account different populations, and so there's now these regulations need to adapt to the technology, to the impact that AI will bring. But there's already a baseline in healthcare that I think is different than sectors in our society where AI is really also being disruptive. But as I mentioned, there's many challenges, and one of them, as we start deploying these algorithms to treat patients, we do know that algorithms can learn biases in the data that they're trained, and so it becomes paramount that we develop data sets that encompass a large and diverse population such that these algorithms do not reflect these biases in their decision makings. In addition to that, we need to have these algorithms to be more transparent, be more interpretable, so that we can understand why they make the decisions that they make, so that they can be used to inform clinicians and not induce them in errors. I think that also critical is the fact that these algorithms will not be developed by doctors, at least now, maybe in the future, but they do require a level of technical expertise that is in the hand of engineers, software developers, researchers. And so we need to foster collaborations between universities, between research institutes, and between hospitals and clinics. And the project that I'm part of is a reflection of that. We need engineers working closely together with clinicians so that we can develop technologies that address the needs of the clinical staff. We also need to educate the clinicians as a new technology that has the potential to disrupt treatment. Clinicians need to be aware of them so that they can be widely used, but they also need to know how to use them in a way that is safe for patients. And in the medical field, many times clinicians they don't like the word disruption, so they show some inertia to change. And so if we really want this technology to have a positive effect in our society, we need to train a new generation of doctors, of nurses, of clinical staff, so that they can use these new technologies in a positive way. So there's many challenges in terms of data set and making these algorithms not biased, in regulation, although maybe in healthcare not as important as in other sectors. But I believe that we are in the right way to address with this new legislation coming. We also need to be careful not to not to suppress innovation in these startups. So, for example, to develop a technology that is a medical device, that technology is already highly regulated by a set of regulations that oversee medical devices. But now, if the same technology, in addition to having to be certified for those regulations, they also need to be certified for AI, it's like a double burden that these small companies that usually develop these technologies need to satisfy. So there's definitely challenges, but I believe we're in the right way to address them.
And interesting to see if the medical regulations can keep up with the AI regulations at the same time.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I want to thank all of the audience for sharing your questions with us. Many of you sent us some fabulous questions, and we picked one for each of our panelists. So these are questions from the audience, and Elham, I'll start with you. How can we ensure that AI governance frameworks prioritize and integrate diversity and inclusion to avoid perpetuating bias and discrimination in AI systems?
Thank you for that question. If I can just take a moment and building on the praises for the executive order, I attended a AI summit last week, and there was a lot of other praises for the executive order to find the right balance and being comprehensive in addressing all of the concerns of the AI, including the issue of the bias and inequality. And one of the members of the European Commission or Parliament that had their input and the pen on writing the EU AI Act even mentioned that the executive order is the mother of all AI laws. So we are, again, it might be a little bit bragging, but this is a lot of work also in front of us. Another thing that I want to say that addressing your question, but also building on the comments other panelists mentioned, on AI evaluations and doing AI evaluations, right? Many of you in the room may think that, well, what's unique about AI? They are at the end software systems and data systems, and we know how to evaluate them. We know how to evaluate systems and technologies for their technical robustness, to be valid and reliable. We don't know yet how to evaluate those systems for their societal robustness, that they work in their context of use, in the environment that they are being using, in a fair, equitable, privacy-enhanced, secure, interpretable, transparent, and accountable way. And that's the challenge of our time, and that's what we are trying to address. AI systems are not just data compute algorithms, they are interactions of data compute algorithms with the environment, with the human that operates them, the human that's used them or being impacted by that. So in all of the guidelines that we are building, in all of the evaluations that we are trying to build, we are addressing all those from a socio-technical perspective to make sure that the issues of the societal robustness, including the bias and privacy and all that are being included, are being addressed. And to get there, we really need to bring many different perspectives and backgrounds and thoughts into the process. In development of the AI RMF, very early on, we realized that, of course, we have to consult with the tech community, developers of the systems, but we also need to engage the community that study the impact of AI systems. So we need computer scientists, mathematicians, statisticians, but we also need psychologists, sociologists, cognitive scientists, philosophers, even we add them to our team and in engagements that we did. So going forward, we have to basically build a community that's inclusive of all of the different demographics, but more importantly, the different thought backgrounds, and make sure that they are all represented, they're all around the table, but more than that, they have a voice and influence in the process.
Fantastic, thank you very much. Daniela, what controls can be set to prevent further proliferation of fake news and data, which become much easier with AI? What are the possibilities for a country like Portugal to counter this flood of fake news and synthetic pictures?
I think it goes back to the point that I started, and I now going to tie it up here. From legislation to certification. Governments have, the job of governments is to legislate, regulate. But the certification part is the practical operation framework to measure that the legislation is being enforced. So when Elham says we kind of still don't know yet how to evaluate the social impact of certain systems, it's true, pretty much social even more, but one practical way to evaluate through a certification that doesn't exist, just like any other certification out there, the HIPAA compliances, the energetic certifications, and all sorts, the ISO certifications of InfoSec and so on. Until we get there, an easy one is starting with data, which again, of course, it's what I've been telling all my life. Every AI starts in data. And if we can audit how the data was built, whether it was consented, paid for, who participated, the bias and unbias of it, and the representation of that, that is a big step into making this more practical. How can we identify deep fakes? We have to train models on deep fakes, just like we train models on natural language processing. So the actual identification, deep fakes are synthetic generation of the likeness of the voice or the image of someone that was not approved by the original copied person or the cloned person or voice. That is where the third party, just like I've been saying this, I'm thinking about this a lot, something like an entity that controls passports and issues passports in every country, in Europe, in the US, every country, voice will be the next biometric footprint of a person. Just like we have our picture, we have our footprint, our digital prints, we'll have to have our voice, and we'll have to have a lot more of our image, not just the picture, but also the 3D video of us. And that needs to be part of that database. That needs to be controlled by an independent, trustworthy entity, which probably is the government. So that level of deepfake and if it's not there, if it's not approved, it should not even, every respected company should not consider, should by default, because there will be very few people that will actually add the watermark, just the ones that are doing the right thing. There's a lot of others that won't. So how do we control that? And I know it was a long way to get to the certification and to training models with that too.
I can just interject and say that as part of the executive order, we are supposed to write the guidelines on how to do the watermarking or broader content provenance. And hopefully we get there.
Okay, thank you. Paolo, one of your goals is to make AI more trustworthy. One of the most consequential moves in the president's executive order is a requirement for companies to notify the government when training powerful foundation models and to share the results of their safety tests. Does that make AI more trustworthy?
I think that's not enough, I would say. So one of the key components of trustworthy AI is explainability. So we need to have AI that is explainable. So for example, when a doctor is making a decision that is assisted by an AI system, the doctor needs to, to believe in that decision. So we need to be able to ask the AI system why the system is recommending that. And that connects very much, I don't want to go into very technical, but interpretability that we were just talking before coming into the panel is a research area that is absolutely essential in terms of making these black boxes, because these AI models are like black boxes. So they are made of billions of numbers, billions of what's called parameters that they don't explain themselves. And so if the doctor is assisted by the system, and the system says, okay, this patient may have a cancer, so we should start chemotherapy immediately. Should the doctor do that? Because so that's where the interpretability of the model is absolutely essential. The explainability of the model is absolutely essential, because in this sense, and this is something very important, and I was reading the executive order, and it covers that, by gathering specialists not only in data science, not only in machine learning, not only in engineering, but also on human factors, people that have to do with, for example, user interface design, so designers, people that have to deal with the way the model, the way the AI interacts with the stakeholders. And when I mean the stakeholders, I mean not only the doctor, but also the hospital administrator, the patient. The patient needs to believe in the AI. AI. And if we look into the future of healthcare, we want to spread AI as much as possible. For example, we want AI to reach remote areas so that people can be treated where no doctor is available. And for this, to have this level of trust towards the AI, we need really to work on explainability. And so I would say that's one of the key areas. So we are gathering a set of research centers on this area, on explainability, to really move forward in terms of enabling AI products to make them explainable. And this is something that we are still very far on these large language models like ChatGPT, because as you know, they can hallucinate, they can start producing content that is not right, it's not factful. And so we need to advance this area of trust towards AI in a broader term, and that has very much to do with explainability.
Okay. Tiago, how do we address the bias in data when there are so many limitations to data access, for instance, in healthcare? More broadly, how can we make sure that AI restrictions and regulations based on data privacy do not prevent innovation and discourage projects like yours from getting off the ground?
Just maybe some context. So, as was already mentioned, biases are one of the main challenges of AI models. And it's particularly critical for models that use health data, because one way to avoid these biases is just to train these models with as much data as possible and as diverse as possible. And in healthcare, there is just not that much data available. Usually clinics, hospitals, they keep, for privacy issues, they keep their data private for themselves. They don't share with other institutes. And so if a technology has to be developed, usually it'll need to engage with multiple clinics, multiple hospitals to try to get data as diverse as possible. This will probably involve engaging with different geographical regions, having truly international technological development so that we can have data being acquired from people from different ethnicities all over the world. So that is one way that will need to be done, and that's probably one of the most difficulties. Now, there's ways to circumvent this. There are techniques, taking advantage of generative AI. We can synthesize data from few data points. We can create many more data points. This is a way to cheat. It's not perfect, but it can definitely improve the availability of data. And so these two, I would say, they're the most important ones. But we also need to invest in ways to detect, to audit and to test these algorithms, to check for their biases. And now this is a matter more for the regulatory and for the certifying bodies that will need to come up with this test center so that the systems can be tested and checked for these biases, which is something that we still don't have in practice and we'll need to quickly adapt. As already mentioned, data sharing and establishing large consortiums will be key. One way is also, privacy is critical, and there are reasons why hospitals don't want to send their patients' data to a company or things like that. So there's techniques that these models can be deployed to hospitals and train on their data there, such that the data never leaves the safety of the data servers of those clinics. So technologies like this that will enhance the privacy and the storage of the data will also be critical for developing these models that do not show these biases. The question of whether all of this will not interfere with innovation, it's an important one. But we are operating here really in we don't have a lot of margin. It's healthcare particularly is a critical industry, and compromising data of patients is something that once happens you cannot revert, right? Recently there's been this very big case of a company that does private genetic testing, that their database was compromised, and so there's now in the on the dark internet, thousands or maybe millions of users that have their genetic data available, mine including. So it's things like this that we want to avoid going forward.
Okay.
Can I make a quick comment
Please.
about the privacy-enhancing technologies that you said, and say that we can't, that's the area that we need more innovations and more researchers to work. And again, under the executive order, we have some task for that. So there is this balance that innovation can improve the safety and trust, and that's the forward-lookingness of the EU to invest and encourage investments and direct some of the agencies to work on privacy-enhancing technologies so that the models can be trained where the data are not being leaked. So there's a lot of really good research work happening in privacy-enhancing technology, interpretability, bias, all of these things. So if you are a researcher or supporting research, or you have a researcher, just give them a word of encouragement, because there's a lot of work to do for all of us.
One thing that is very, can I add something?
Please, this is why we're
also
here.
differential privacy and so on. It's one of the key domains of research in this area. And I think that it's very important, for example, on healthcare, to understand all these contexts from a multiple perspective. So we need to bring into the conversation people that are not only scientists and engineers, but also people from that have to do with legal. For example, we always face the challenges of sharing data across hospitals to create a critical mass, and there are legal issues that are raised to, of course, prevent that. Okay, because people have not signed informed consent and so on. But on the other hand, we need to create this critical mass because we're going to save lives. The other day I was in an event, and one person asked me, and I was a bit surprised, if I knew what was killing more people at hospitals today with the technology we have. And I was like, killing lack of doctors or something like that. And then he answered, data. We don't have data. If we had data, we would be able to develop AI systems that address these challenges at scale. And so we have to have the legal perspective, we have to have the scientific perspective, the engineering perspective, the ethical perspective, which is also very important. So the World Health Organization was talking about the importance of the patient when he's sharing his data, to understand that by sharing his data, he's benefiting himself first of all, which is very important. It's not just to share data for the common good. First, he has to feel like he's benefiting himself. And this has to do with ethical, an ethical perspective. And so we need to gather all these people from these different domains, from ethics, from legal, from science and technology and so on, and really move forward, because this is something that, and of course, we need to have the support of the government on this. And yeah, that's why it's so important to have kind of this initiative, the executive order, and the UI Act.
There's one third way to bring data, besides the real-world data and synthetic data, simulated data. And that's how we bring, coming from a data company that we bring these three offers to customers. Simulated data works with healthcare data as well.
Yeah.
And actually is more targeted
and avoids the privacy issues
and resolves the anonymous. Exactly.
Yes,
so
exactly.
It's a very successful way of doing it.
Exactly.
Anything to add?
Great stuff has been already mentioned about all of these things. On the bias thing, I just want to go back and say, we did a paper, I think, I have to say this right now, that everything we do or we continue to do is in close collaboration with the community. We have really smart people at NIST, but we won't be able to do anything, not just because we don't have enough bandwidth, but because of the different perspectives that they bring. On the bias side, understanding the computational and statistical bias, things such as demographic disparity and others are important, but they are not the only type of bias. And most of the conversations about bias is being dominated by just computational and statistical bias. The paper that we did, again with the help of the community, talks about two other types of biases, systemic bias and human cognitive bias. So if you just go and do a representations, a statistically correct representation of the society today, for anything that we want to do, the biases baked into society is going to come to the AI systems, and it's going to be exacerbated by AI systems. So understanding those type of biases and account for them and addressing them becomes important. And also human cognitive biases, and that's the way different individuals perceive information differently, perceive and process the information from the output that's outputted or generated by AI systems differently, and will make different decisions or act differently. So this type of biases becomes really important when we discuss bias and address them. And the last part about consortium, I'm glad that you brought it up. I know it sounds a little bit self-promotion, but bear with me. As part of the US Safety Institute that was announced last week, and by the way, that institute has been decided to be within NIST, and we are extremely honored and humbled and pleased with the trust in putting that important work within NIST. We're establishing a consortium. So there are Federal Register notice, that's the way US government announced that we are doing something, is out for submission of letter of interest, and there is a workshop next Friday to discuss this. But exactly that's what we are trying to do, to build a place for convening, for informed dialogue and sharing information and insight about all these important topics of tests and evaluations. And the last thing I say, and I'm sorry that I'm talking too much, certification and standards. To do conformity assessment or to have the certification, first we need to have the specification to test based on that. And that's what we're trying to do, bringing the community to build those specifications, those guidelines in a way that are science-based and empirically validated. We lack that information, and we lack that measurement science on how to evaluations of the AI system. So a lot of work ahead of us. In a short, we said a lot of good things about the EO. I think if I can just say one thing is that it doesn't give us enough dates. So we have 270 days from October 30th. We are now operating in 260 days or so for delivering all of those things. But exciting work ahead of us.
Well, thank you, everyone. I have to say, on behalf of all of us, we are honored and humbled that you have come and spent this evening with us. From a layperson's perspective, we are in uncharted territories. I think we can all agree that we feel much more confident after this conversation, knowing that some of the best minds and best hearts are out there making sure that this will keep us safe and give us guardrails to send us in the right direction. So on behalf of everyone here and the greater good, I want to say thank you to all of you, and I'll be checking in on you like every few days. To say I feel like we have to do the toilet paper roll, like 259 days, 258 days. But
we have to collect it.
Right, exactly. But thank you very much. Just a little housekeeping note. Once we conclude, please, everybody join us out on the terrace for a lovely cocktail reception. We're going to get rid of the chairs and reset the house so that everybody could come in and hopefully enjoy all of the beautiful art, which is always a big feature here. And to conclude, I said, how could I conclude after all of these incredible people have spoken? So I decided, along with the help of Nick, that I was going to ask ChatGPT to draft my closing remarks. So I asked ChatGPT to draft remarks to conclude a panel on AI regulation and governance. And bear with me, it's a little verbose, I'll be honest, for my taste, but you'll let me know what you think. So as we conclude this fireside chat on AI governance, it's crucial to recognize the significance of bridging the gap between human emotions and machine learning algorithms. The recent U.S. government executive order on AI emphasizes the need to ensure the safety and security of AI technology, including addressing issues such as bias, regulation, and intellectual property rights. Similarly, the United Nations creation of an advisory body to address international governance of AI underscores the global effort to regulate this transformative technology. As we navigate the impact of AI in various sectors, including healthcare, it's imperative to harness its potential to enhance meaningful human connections while addressing ethical and regulatory considerations. And on that note, we can all decide what we think about it later, and thank you all.